morning. So this is the Unusual Field Guide Journey to Product Market Fit podcast. And I'm here this morning with the founder of Workato, Vijay Tella. Vijay, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, John.
Yeah, super excited to talk to you this morning. You've got such an exciting story to tell. And so let's kick it off with giving us a little bit of a just short background on yourself and taking us back in the time machine to your insight for starting Workato.
Yeah, so I think I've been in the sort of the broader application integration automation space for a while. I was a founder at a company called Tibco, where we created sort of the first commercial product in that space called the TIB, the information bus, and then since then some other companies and so on. But what really inspired Workato was I did a consumer company for a few years after Tibco and Oracle, and doing enterprise integration for a long time. And it was like we're doing a really cool app. It was like an Instagram for video 2 years before Instagram, but with live streaming, like Twitter's Telegram. It grew to 20 million users. It just rewired my thinking around how software should be built. Like it's beautiful, compelling, and in many ways the expectations for how it should work were higher than in the like if our product it was called Quick, QIK. If it was down for a few seconds, I mean, Ashton Kutcher would be screaming on internet about it, on Twitter about it. So I think it's just different bar, and I think I came out of it in a different view of software. And the Workato, I took we got acquired by Skype and took a couple of years off. But the thing that I saw was that the space that we were in before had completely changed, the integration space. This explosion of SaaS and cloud applications, and a lot of the movement was being driven by business teams and lines of business. So so the skills were different, and there was not a really good product, and it felt like there was an approach here to the traditional heavy-duty middleware, but making it more accessible and a different playbook, both in terms of product design and go-to-market and everything else. So that's the sort of a little bit of a journey to arrive at Workato.
And if you take us back to 2013 and these firsthand problems you had, a lot of times we refer to the technology inflection that founders can leverage as part of their insight. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're talking about integrations, APIs, the SaaS wave. Is that right? Is that how you thought about what was changing in the world such that it really required a new solution?
I think there were like 5 big things that were changing, right? I think, and then so the one was, yes, the explosion of SaaS and just the number of best-of-breed applications. That was one, and so the integration problem is much bigger. The second was, I think the delivery, how these things were delivered, right? I think there was the traditional like on-prem stuff, and then the cloud 1.0. But then with the containerization and cloud native sort of technologies, I think the whole consumption of how integration could be delivered as a utility, not just as a server to be installed and set up and managed and all that stuff. So that's that was another like a big thing. The third was machine learning. There was just like a million people and million companies all figuring out how to solve the churn problem. But if there was a way to build a GitHub-like community to kind of leverage, tap into the best practices in the industry easily, that's so I think learning from what folks were doing, and also making sort of building of these things more AI powered, like machine learning powered, pre-gen AI. So that was the third thing. I think the fourth thing was that who was driving the bus was really the business teams, lower skilled people. They have the domain expertise, but they're not like the technical developers. And most of the products, were technical. And I think the last thing was just it felt like the traditional integration technologies, there was an alphabet soup of them. There was just like, like TIBCO-like thing, which was, real-time integration, and there's batch or ETL, ELT data integration. There's, RPA, business process management, API-led, all of these things. There was just I think that it almost felt like there was a ultimate, limit of complexity those things can get to, and there was a bit of a being fed up with that aspect of it that was happening. So when we looked at all of those, we felt it was an opportunity to completely rethink and refactor this whole space and solve it bottom up in a very different way.
And so we use the framework of the value hypothesis, Vijay, when we work with our founders.
Yeah.
And the value hypothesis has three parts. The what, which is an instantiation of what you're going to build, of your insight. The who, which is your initial desperate customer. And then the how, which is how you price and distribute. So if you can take us back to those early days and your initial value hypothesis, the what, the who, and the how would you describe each of those if I had, in 2 or 3 sentences only for each?
Yeah. So what is these apps had to work together. They couldn't be standalone. So you needed to have, data from one being available in other workflows across these different applications. You have hundreds of apps, thousands of workflows potentially. And, being able to do that easily by people that have the problem, not by like pushing it over to the wall to a few people in IT. That's the what, right? That was a big gap. Who's desperate for this are everybody in the an enterprise that has this issue where they're deploying a new app and that needs to work with somebody else, right? So the business teams that are rolling out new tech, they can't be standalone. It has to be like deployed and worked across, with your existing IT environment. So these are like, they exist both within IT, but also because some apps are deployed by IT, but also lines of business, marketing, sales. And so you have Salesforce admins that are, kind of trying to, you're not just setting up Salesforce, you're setting up how it connects with Marketo, how it connects with some, other campaign tools and so on, right? So it's those people, right? In fact, when we launched Workato, like we opened it up to anybody our beta program was anybody with a Salesforce account, Salesforce admin could sign up and use the product. So that was the who initially.
That's who you thought was desperate. But usually people aren't correct. And just to be clear, one of the learnings for founders is it's important that you're willing to pivot on who you think is desperate, who you ultimately go after initially. So who did you think was going to be that first desperate user, and then who did it end up being?
So I think what we didn't realize as much was that IT has a lot of say in what tech gets used, and number one, and number two, the business teams have the problem, but they don't really understand necessarily the complexities of the solution that needs to be deployed, right? I think security and governance and these kind of things are not something that sales ops people are thinking about as much. So the business teams need IT, and IT, if you're and going direct to business teams, like we let anybody come, whether it's business or anybody. And when business teams came directly, the IT, would feel like we are like a bit of a banded technology out there. They were. So I think the learning was not like where the problem was. I think we were like relatively pretty on target with that, but that it's a ubiquitous problem across the company and in technical and non-technical roles. But it was the path that we needed to take for driving maximum success was partnering with this team called business technology that exists within IT. These are people that exist within IT to explicitly support the different line of business teams, with their sort of initiatives. So that the learning really was the big learning and unlock was like figuring out our path. When you have a million use cases, what's the path to take? I think that's the learning we had.
Yeah, and it's very common, just so in an effort to help other founders, when you build something that is horizontal in terms of its value, trying to figure out if you can segment the market more narrowly. For example, were there certain companies in an industry that were going through really a dire push for integrations? Were there certain company sizes or geographies where after you had enough conversations, you realized, wow, there's blood in the water here? You were very clever because you had a freemium distribution model initially, so that gave you a lot of data. But then the analysis of that data is what led you to, we call it the first bowling pin. Like who is that
Yeah.
initial segment? And so can you share any
Yeah,
learnings?
no, for sure. I think when we opened it up, we are like, we were just getting users from every type of company, from mom and pop, literally a restaurant person trying to integrate their point of sale with their like QuickBooks in the back, to Enbridge, which is like a big energy infrastructure company in Canada, right? Like trying to do their employee onboarding type of stuff. So so what we found was that we wanted to focus a little bit further up segment. So we went from self-serve signups to some sort of a curated way of working with them, because the problem is very large problem. The hypothesis that it's that every company in every corner of the company, you need to orchestrate all of your data, applications, APIs, and processes. Which company in which part of which company doesn't have the problem? They have that. It's a hard problem. That got validated, but I think there are two things we learned. What kind of segments we focus on was less industry and more, I think, if you have more, the larger the company, more the apps. And if you have n apps, it's n squared, the number of integrations. So it's the complexity grows exponentially. The pain point is bigger. So that is one. The other thing is, yes, I think, the bowling pin is go to IT. They have integration problems just within IT, because they've got some core applications and security integrations and so on. So go work with them, and then that's the first bowling pin to knock down. And there are these people called enterprise architects that are kind of defining the technology stack for the company. They are like the truth tellers of like, hey, what should the tech stack be for company? So connecting with those type of people and then working with them to take a systematic approach to the rest of the company is, I think, what we learned.
And if you think about the first dozen or 24 paying customers, was there something similar about all of them in terms of, we call it relative desperation, or another way to think about it is, if they didn't get this done, the consequences of them not succeeding were dire for their business or for a competitive reason. Any pattern there that you recall?
So what we saw was, I think the people who were coming to us were all like bleeding, maybe not even from the fingertips. I mean, this is like, if they didn't, do these integrations, their apps were not working. I mean, it was like, it's a core problem.
And were these revenue generating apps, like core apps to the business?
Well, I think it's like it's everything from your core financial processes, order to cash, onboarding, offboarding employees, especially offboarding them properly without risk, and the revenue, like lead management and like conversion, type thing, supply chain. So it's we saw problems in all of these areas, but the people that truly just were like appreciated this the most were these people called business systems or business technology people that exist within IT. They are the people that these problems are getting dumped at, the big ones, the big integrations are being dumped on them. And they are always backlogged. It's hard to do because the tools are very difficult that existed before Workato. And for them, their life was miserable. And every day their priorities were changing. So we talked to some of these people. And it was literally these people that were making things happen. They were like in the engine room. They were not getting the respect. They were they were backlogged. It was. And I think we were like a total savior for them, right? I think we were a game changer for them. So when we connected with them, I said, look, and those people are also somewhat technical enough to understand that, hey, this is a replacement for MuleSoft and Pega and TIBCO. Whereas the business teams can solve their business problem, but they don't really understand, like the alternatives are really terrible, don't exist. I mean, so I think we really hit the spot with these people in a very deep way. So that's the thing that we then focused on.
And was there a time in the company's journey early on where you switched from a self-serve freemium to, once you realized this is exactly who your desperate customer was, to more of an outbound or proactive motion to go find those people you just described? Or
Yes,
maybe
I
talk
think
a
it
little
was
bit about how
about
you did that.
Yes, it was about 4 years in. We had, like you said, once one of the great things about a self-serve, PLG stuff is you have a lot of data about all these journeys, and then we decided to focus, as you said, and then we switched to more of a curated experience. Another reason we switched was some of these problems are inherently challenging, like integrating with SAP and Workday, making those workflows work. We can never make, like even Workato can't wave a magic wand and make that problem like super easy. So like there were these people coming to our website, signing up and trying to do an SAP integration by themselves. And when they don't succeed, like, by the end of that session, they kind of feel like they're not smart, and they feel like Workato is not for them, and they'll go sign up with MuleSoft, who will actually build it for them. So we felt like we were. It helps us to have, where we kind of pivoted our motion to kind of engage with them a little bit. We'll still give them the ropes to go do their thing, but we'll orient them enough so they can be successful. We're like dramatically easier than anything else out there to go build these complex integrations, with these tough like, legacy apps. But we found that it helps to focus on those, and also our targets also changed. Like we could like go focus on, both in terms of like direct outbounding and partnerships and all of the other things that we do. It helped us focus on a bit better.
Around these use cases and certain personas, it sounds
Yeah,
like.
use cases, personas, certain segments of the market. Yeah.
How did you know you had product market fit?
I think it was, pretty, I think the response was actually pretty good. Like our problem was, how do we get people to like find us, right? Like to like, hey, there is this, thing called Workato that
Hmm.
is, made integrations easier. Um, so we had a hypothesis like, okay, Salesforce admins, they're basically running, like sales related workflows, and there's like 2.7 million of them on LinkedIn. So we said, let's go target them, right? And then we stumbled into, like, they have these people called MVPs in Salesforce community, that there are about 150 of them. They're like, they evangelize in the Salesforce community, but they're also well connected to each other. And one of our advisors, Anshu, suggested that we connect with them, and we hound dogged them at like Dreamforce, and like we did all kinds of stuff, right, to get in and have conversations with them. So eventually, one of them, there was a gentleman called Tal Frankfurt who run like a nonprofit oriented Cloud for Good, like a consulting company. He started like experimenting with this. He was blown away, and then he basically just started talking about it. And the other 150 MVPs got to know about it, like, and they like got into it. So the fit was immediate. The problem was actually finding, the places where you could get. I mean, we know this problem. We invented integration, and our like, and we, I think where we saw was that like our aim to make it accessible to Salesforce admins, we did hit that mark with them, and they helped us smooth that part of it out. But once we connected to them, I think it just took off at that point, right?
Vijay, that's an incredible gem. I always try to help founders understand the power of references. And there's also the concept of crossing the chasm, if you remember the
Yes.
kind of the famous book.
Yeah.
And the way to cross the chasm is you have evangelical early adopters who are delighted by your product.
Yeah.
And the proverbial chasm is all those folks who want to wait to see they're on the other side. They want to wait to see
Yeah.
that someone's delighted by the
And
product. So
and
it
and
sounds
and
like
you have some of these people, if you get those kind of evangelizers whose job at Salesforce was to have tens of thousands of Twitter followers because they're chosen for their skills and ability to evangelize by Salesforce, right? So you connect to these evangelizers that have built in big networks to people that you want to target. So that was a really nice kind of an idea that somebody put to us, and we just focused on that, and that's where we really found and like honed our fit in the
yeah.
market.
And did they help you, if you think just back to the product itself? Because step one is to identify those evangelist
Mhm.
types, but then you have to delight them. You said
Yes.
they were blown away. That was a
Yeah.
really powerful statement because
Yeah.
when they're blown away, or AKA delighted, they'll tell people about a product, frankly, who don't even really care about that product. They're just so happy about the
Yes.
experience. How
No,
long did it take you to reach that? Like, was
no,
there
I think
months, quarters?
it was pretty quick actually.
Hmm.
I think Tal, you know, actually many of them were like working in Salesforce consulting practices, and in their world, when they needed to do these big integrations, order to cash with like NetSuite, SAP, with Salesforce, and all this kind of stuff, they had to bring in an integration specialist. They bought in like a tool like Boomi or MuleSoft or
Hmm.
something. So their world was very different. Integration was always a hard problem, and they had to bring in specialists. With Workato, they themselves could solve this problem without bringing anybody else. So, and that they could see that right away. But they also were, their language. Like in Salesforce, there's a certain like approach, vibe and approach, and even terminology, like cloning objects and things like that. So we actually kind of like we shaped our product to kind of match like the experiences that felt native to them. So it definitely helped us with yeah, the response was immediately positive, and they also really helped us sharpen up the last 20-30% of our experience.
Excellent. And then last question on this, how did your pricing evolve from when you initially started to working with these Salesforce integrators? Did they help you think through that as well? Or did you feel like you had your initial hypothesis on how to price was always correct?
No, I think we learned a lot of things along the way on our pricing journey. I think we priced it really. One of the things that people were like, Zapier was already out there. It was popular, and we were like, we can look at it as a modern version of MuleSoft or an enterprise version of Zapier or like whatever, right? So we self-serve like plans that were pretty inexpensive. The idea was to get large volumes of customers, users in like even within a company like Slack, have 30 different groups use Workato, right? And that's and I think where we pivoted to was you're selling a platform to IT, and they are going to procure the capacity needed to support, just like somebody buys Snowflake, right? The data people in a company buy Snowflake. There's integration and automation centers of groups that would this business technology teams that would procure Workato for everybody else. So when we went to that model, we approached it differently. We went like it was always usage or consumption oriented, and I think we became more purely usage and consumption oriented.
Excellent. All right, we're coming up on time. So, in our last minute, I want you to give your best advice to current and future founders. So, I'm just going to give you a couple rapid fire questions. Sound good?
Yes. Let's do it.
So, that was 12 years ago when you started Workato. I'm sure it's gone by in a blink. Now we're in the age of AI. So, what's your advice for founders who are building in the age of AI as it relates to automation, workflows, because it's evolving yet again?
Yeah. So I think it's a dramatic difference. I think in the pre-gen AI, if, you were like focused on how you were going to solve the problem, meaning you're designing the engine, if you will, the workflow, and then you're like executing it, and then you're With AI, I think you should start with the outcomes you want for your customers and for yourself, and AI can help you drive that bus on the how. I think it's a very big it's a very big mental shift, and it's not just for startups. It's the shift that we're making at Workato now, 10 years in, saying we're going from recipe thinking, which is more deterministic, top down, to agentic thinking, which is outcome oriented and will dynamic solutioning, right? I think that's a big shift that everybody has to go through, whether you're starting a company now, or you're in you already got a startup going, but you need to pivot.
That's an insightful point. So then, what makes for a great team in this current era?
Okay, I think it's always about the diversity of perspectives and backgrounds and skills, and ability to challenge each other, and really move fast, right? I think so. There's got to be some congruence in the speed with which you all want to move, right? But you want to have very different perspectives around the table, especially with AI. I think it's how you envision like the outcomes you want to drive. So yeah, I think diversity is in all in types of backgrounds and thoughts that people bring, and having real diversity in the team, I think will be in the traditional sense, I think will be a plus in that regard.
Jody and I talk about the importance of soft skills for founders, things like storytelling and empathy. Any lessons learned you'd love to share with our audience, just that on your own founder journey?
Yeah, I think empathy is like absolutely core, right? For your customers, for your team, and everything, right? It's you're like, like you said, there's so much you get wrong, and it's really important to be really humble and connected. Storytelling is such an important skill. It's actually something that I still I'm working on. It's not been I know how important it is, and I struggle to be great at it, but it's really important because I think people are going to understand everything about you and about them and the journey in stories. It's not, it's a lesson. It's a lesson that doesn't mean that I've been great at it, but yes, it's
great. Vijay, this has been so fantastic. Thank you so much for going through the journey with us. Hopefully, going back now almost 12 years and remembering where you've come from has been fun for you. But I'm telling you now, it's a fantastic set of skills and lessons that you've just shared with us. So you've just done a great favor to many founders of the future.
No, thank you. And I learned a lot from a lot of folks along the way. So thank you, John. Yeah.
Welcome. Great. All right, Vijay.
Yeah, thank you.